guest today is Edward Jones, and he wrote this book, A New Consciousness Born, You Are the Source. Now, I've just finished reading this book, and it tells me basically that my thinking is the basis of not only my problems, but the problems of the world and all the violence. Thinking is my problem anyway, so I'm just going to introduce Edward. Welcome to the show, Edward. It's so nice to have you here today.
Function necessarily of stopping to think or stopping thinking. It's a function of discovering that the thinking you're doing is actually being done for you. It's actually thinking you. Sounds like a strange statement when you say thinking is thinking you. However, we become this robotic entity that has no thoughts of their own. We think we have thoughts of our own. However, the thoughts are the things that are thinking us. We're born into this dynamic, if you will, called thinking is thinking us, although that's a phrase that I use, and it may not be linguistically correct. I'm not sure. People kind of bat their eyes and look at me sideways when I say that. But it's actually true. And one of the things that this book does is it opens the person reading its brain or mind or way of looking at something so that they might begin to discover that they are robotic, that they are robots, that they are at the effect of their thinking. For instance, if a couple is married and one discovers the other looking at another person, they have this jealous thing, and they might go into a jealous rage, and all their actions are just fighting nature. Well, that is a perfect example of thinking the person, because the jealousy is creating the action that the person's taking. And the same thing with anger, the same thing with what we call love. It causes some some strange action that seem to overpopulate those seem to overpopulate the planet, though.
Yeah, let's start with something easier than love, Edward.
Yes.
Okay. It's different with what you are talking about. That's different than what some of the spiritual teachers say about living in the moment, be out of ego, don't think about the next thing, just go with what's in front of you now. What's different about your message?
Well, all of those things that you just said are mind-directed. In other words, it's the mind directing the mind to no longer do what the mind does. You see? So if the mind then comes up with a new thing to do, who is still the director?
I'm the director. It's my mind.
Yeah, you still are. The thinking is still thinking you, no matter what. So if somebody says stay in the now, you look and you say, well, let me see, where's the now? I'm going to go stay in it. So it doesn't have any impact. There's no. If you'll notice, perhaps reading the book, there's actual things that we can do that have the ability or the possibility of claiming ourselves, or I don't really care to use the word reclaim because that would indicate going backwards, but to claim the actual self, that which we are, without the be in the here and now and all that. Those have become rather cliché, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And if it were
because there's nobody telling you how to do that or what to do to have that happen.
Yeah, and the steps that you lay out are really, number one, is to tell the truth, not to other people, but first and foremost to yourself, to catch yourself when you're lying so that you can continually retrain yourself to tell more of the truth.
Well, not necessarily, you see, because that would still be the training thing.
Right.
But if you slow down with what you just said, you'll discover that if you speak the truth, that is the here and now. That is the now. The lie happens in yesterday and tomorrow. The truth happens right now in your life, in your daily life. And you put it very well. When you first begin this, it would almost necessitate itself to be speaking the truth with yourself, because this is not a world into which you can suddenly begin running around speaking the truth to everybody.
I know you got your nose broken once for doing that.
Yeah, and yes, and your dance card will definitely go empty really fast. The ones that you thought were your best friends, your parents, the people just begin to disappear, because this is a world that lives its life in a conspiracy of ineffectiveness. We all breathe together, if you will, to remain ineffective. And if somebody shows up becoming effective, speaking truth and living honestly, that person is a huge threat.
So this message, this book, is really probably for people who want to transform themselves, but also really see that we're at a time of crisis in our world, with our earth, with our consciousness, and really want to transform to a new way of being.
Yes. When I hear all of the, let's call them New Agers, just because it's been pointed that there are New Agers, when I hear them speaking about 2012 and the end of the world and all of that, I actually concur. I actually I don't know about the 2012 date, but I actually see that coming as well, but I see it in an entirely different manner. I see it as our own personal and then worldwide transformation that ends the world. So when I hear somebody say the end of the world is coming, I say yes, the end of the world as we know it, the end of the world of war, and the end of the world of fighting, and the end of the world of jealousy and anger and all of the consternation and confusion that's here now. That, by nature, by the fact that it's been here so long, needs to end. So that, to me, would be the 2012 end of the world scenario.
Now, I do want to go back to love, because you're telling me that I can't love my peanut butter on toast anymore, and that it's ridiculous to say I love chocolate. Well, I do love chocolate. I eat it almost every day. You know, you got to explain this to me, because my thinking brain wants to fight with you, Edward.
Yes, okay. Fight away. As long as it's a thinking brain. It's a difficult one, perhaps, to describe. But if you heard your husband say, if you're married, if you heard your husband say, I love chocolate, oh boy, I love peanut butter, and I love Michelle, well, what would happen?
Well, it's like, he better love me more than peanut butter and chocolate.
Go. Then you have to introduce duality.
Right.
You have to have levels of more. And I get emails from this one fella, and he always, when he signs it much love. What in the heck is much love? So you want to introduce a duality. You want to say that, well, okay, it's okay for you to love peanut butter and for you to love chocolate and for you to love your husband, but you got to love your husband more. Mm-hmm. But if there was love on this planet, which there isn't any of, it wouldn't have any level. It wouldn't have any more than and less than and greater than. There simply would be love.
Yeah, you talk about love in the book as more than, I saw it as a verb when I was reading it. It is an action, but it's not an action of doing, it's an action of being. You be love. So you don't be love to peanut butter, but I can be love with the people around me, the people that I love.
Well, there's a possibility, an outside possibility, of loving something that has the ability of loving you back. To love something that has no ability to love you back surely has to be like, or preference, or preferred. Do you see? We are so lazy and lackadaisical with our language. We don't know the words that we're using. You see on TV all the time, the fellow wins the Nobel Peace Prize, and he comes up and he says, "I'd like to thank," and then he goes through this whole list. And I watched that with amazement. And I said, well, when's he going to thank them? You see?
Right.
Because he said, I would like to thank. And you see that all the time. Our language is sloppy. And in the back of this book, if you got to the back part of it,
I did.
Did you see the glossary of words back there?
I did. I looked up woman.
Yes.
Woman. A
you didn't like that, did you?
A figment. Image. Projection.
Exactly. And same thing for man. Why would that be? If you're not going to answer that, are you?
I'm going to let you answer it, Edward.
If you were to ask 100 people to define what woman is, and 100 people to define what man is, how many definitions would you get?
No, 100 or maybe
100.
80. Yeah.
So anything that there's no definition for has to be an illusion.
The book is A New Consciousness Born, You Are the Source, by Edward Jones. And it's an interesting read, but more than that, it forces you to think about your thinking. And I'm sure Edward has a lot to say about that statement, so I'll have him back. Edward, I'd love for you to come back on the show. Thank you so much for being a guest here today.
You're welcome, and you're perfect, so thank you as well.